It appears at this point I'm just going to be committing the rest of my life to covering RPG series because, I don't know, just keep starting new ones apparently. The nice part about this series is that at least Breath of Fire is kind of dead in the water, and since there really doesn't seem to be any more games coming right now, just hopefully won't be as long, and as big as a time commitment, so yeah. Hello and welcome all you gamers. This time me, Josh, self-proclaimed RPG guy here, is ready to talk about another franchise. Breath of Fire, specifically the original Breath of Fire one. My history with this series is a lot different. My only game I played through is Breath of Fire 3, bar none one of my favorite PS1 games, RPGs, and just general games of all time. I love it. So calling myself a fan when I played just that a few hours or two about 10 years ago, and now just the original a few months ago, maybe a little stretching, but regardless. For those less in the know, let's begin with a little bit of history of the franchise, and then to the actual game. This was a mostly blind experience for me, so I will give my thoughts on the original title and let you know if it's worth playing today. One of the few times I don't have a physical copy for the game, so you're going to see me here instead of my usual spot. So let's start wasting time. Let's get into Breath of Fire. This is the original one, released in 1993 for the SNES. Let's dive in. So, Capcom, I apparently love talking about this company. This is the company responsible for the Breath of Fire games. You know, Capcom does great series like Street Fighter, Ace Attorney, Monster Hunter, Mega Man, Devil May Cry. Wait a sec, back this shit up. One of the most arguably popular characters, Ryu, shares a name with the smaller franchise. It's like Capcom wanted them to fail here. Look, I get it. As a Golden Sun enjoyer, I have Isaac from Golden Sun as my go-to, but that's not the one everyone goes to. There's Isaac Clarke from Dead Space and Isaac from the Crying Child Finding a Baby game, FNAF. So, I get it. So, Breath of Fire is a 5-series franchise, technically 6, but I really want to pretend like the 6th game isn't a Japan-only mobile game. Thank you very much. As it stands, we have not seen much from this series, and it is unclear to say whether or not we will ever get any other games. The Breath of Fire series features a few staples. First of all, an RPG. Duh. Second, the protagonist features Ryu, a blue-haired boy of varying ages who usually has the ability to transform into a dragon. The side character and most reoccurring of them is Nina, usually a princess from a clan of bird-like people. The closest I can compare, of course, is Link and Zelda, descendants most likely, but not direct games, and can be played however you want. Another unique standout of the series is the heavy emphasis on non-human party members. A lot of RPGs usually feature your cast of humans with the annoying mascot character to sell merch and make stupid jokes. However, the teams of Breath of Fire are composed of many different races. Ryu is of the Dragon Clan. Nina is of a bird-type clan where they have angelic wings and can transform into giant birds sometimes. Others we see here are fish people, mole people, furries, ancient snake goddess mommies, and more. The character designs here are honestly some great standout here. A notable name in the business here is the artist Keiji Inafune. If that sounds familiar, you must be an anime fan on prom night. Inafune obviously is most notable for Mega Man among other Capcom entities, but I gotta say, it's a shame this franchise really never hit it off. There's a lot of unique stuff here. Moving on, Capcom obviously was the company in charge, with the original game being produced by Tokuro Fujiwara, who most notably helped out with the Ghosts and Goblins series, really tying these two back to back here. An interesting note here is that the original Breath of Fire was actually helped published in North America by Square. Yeah, the Square Enix. It seems this was mainly to help translate the heavy loads of text needed for a long role-playing game, and the localization team for Capcom may have been not up to snuff just yet. Anyways, they only helped out with this release, as they did not with subsequent releases, nor the port to the Game Boy Advance in 2001. The game did release to great reviews across the board, and sales seemed to be great. The States seemed to not be as amazing sales-wide until the sequel pushing sales some more. The Game Boy Advance release seemed to have lower scores on average, but by no means poor. It seemed at least the beginning, Capcom saw some great success for this series. So, with that success and scoring, do I agree with the holding that it is a great RPG and can hold its ground? Well, let's get into it, starting with the gameplay basics. RPG standouts are present here, turns based off stats like speed, controlling 4 characters, each with their own set of unique abilities. For example, Ryu is a downright powerhouse, slower than average, with the focus on dragon abilities as the game progresses. These are understandably more broken and make him a clear have in pretty much every battle. Nina is a fast healer and support-like type character, and so on and so forth. There are 8 playable characters here, each have different races with their own unique stats and abilities. Mixing and matching here is pretty forgiving as it can be done mid-battle, which I appreciate. Another big staple in the Breath of Fire identity is the field abilities. These can be done on the overworld and towns and dungeons to help puzzle solve and find greater secrets. Moving into this, it is time to introduce the characters and how they are not all equal. Bo is the first character outside the aforementioned two, who is a Wolfman Hunter, with a small range of spells and a pretty powerful archery arm. He can traverse through the wooded areas all on the field, allowing access to many places you couldn't before. I wish the game told me this, or made it more clear. This took me way too long to figure out. Karn is a thief from a lineage of shapeshifters, who not only is your basic rogue stat-wise and can disarm trapped chests, but can learn extraordinarily powerful skills by way of fusing with other party members when finding old men hiding in cellars. Blue is a half-human, half-snake sorceress with the best spread of offensive magic. With foreshadowing comes less than stellar options. Ox is an ox. Man, with his giant build clearly alluding to a slower speed with heavy hitting attacks. Oddly, he does get access to some basic healing, but pretty much no NPD actually utilize it. Ox can punch down rocks and open cracked walls, creating shortcuts, secrets, or new areas. Gobi is a fish merchantman. I do not understand his battle capabilities. I feel like they throw him in here for underwater travel, as he can turn into a giant fishman to move along the water, and faster. But like right away you get access to breathe underwater, so I don't really know. He sucks in battle. I don't use him. Lastly, Mogu, a mole man who digs holes underground for new secrets and the like, but is also kind of not optimized well in battle. He's the last character you get by a long shot, and at this point, he doesn't really fit into team composition a whole lot. I've already yapped about battles to hell and back without actually complimenting some things here. The sprite work is, first of all, great. The enemy design is pretty neat. The animations as well were nice to look at. The enemies usually move, and the party has really sick battle animations. It feels pretty satisfying to watch, albeit a bit slow. Other animations like spells aren't usually good, just some of the ones like blue spells are really not nice for the eyeballs. Yikes. Overworld traversal and dungeon designs are up next. All in all, the dungeons aren't too bad. Some have you going a few times through, but have quicker clear times thanks to the character's field abilities. Here lies probably my biggest issue with the entirety of the game. It is so slow. The walking speed is god-awfully slow to bear through. No run button, the dungeons are not as bad as I said, but compare that with the high encounter rate battle animations that are cool but can drag on after hours of dungeoning. It becomes long and tedious at times. I don't dislike the grind of an RPG, or else I would not talk about or play all these games, but holy hell does this need a fast forward button. Something, by the way, a modern compilation or remake would do this wonders. Most modern RPGs give that option to do something, like Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age, where you could just put the game at times 2 speed. It's the little things, but it really made that game a lot more bearable with some of the grinding it has. While the ideas are cool and all, it is clear that the team was not balanced well in terms of gameplay. Some of the characters felt like they got no abilities, while Nina, Blue, or Ryu were clearly focused on. Karn has the aforementioned ability where he transforms with a select group of party members. The first one, for example, merges with Bo and Gobi, having an interesting hybrid-looking and upgraded abilities. Karn is a very solid character to have in your lineup, as he can technically bring more of the team into the front line. My only complaint is that his final and best form, Puka, looks stupid. What the hell is this? I pretty much did not use Gobi and Mogu, with Bo being great in the beginning, but usually fused with Karn. My team, once able, primarily was Nina, Ryu, Blue, and Karn, looking like a duck mosquito. Maybe I need to experiment more, but it's too damn late now. I did mention before about Ryu's dragon powers. A bit through the game, you can find these dragon shrines which test Ryu in a 1v1 battle to see if he's worthy to gain abilities of his clan. A cool idea, but most fights are pretty damn easy. If you ended up coming underprepared, this game is actually nice to not game over you and just re-heal you and tell you to get better. Ryu then turns from just swinging a sword to wanting to use dragon powers for most substantial fights. They are not super dependent on your AP, which is your magic, but it will run out if spammed. The dragon has its own health pool, and while no crazy abilities, it does hit for the chosen elemental damage for some good hurt. Getting all dragon abilities is a must for the best ending anyways, so follow a guide if you need to. The most overpowered form is kind of elusive to get, especially if you aren't paying attention. The last bit of gameplay I need to mention, I can hop off my guide comment from right before. Look, I get that some may not want to use them, but I would consider this for the time being. One big thing is the poor translation on some of these aspects. Dialogue isn't really hard to read, but many places the monster's spells, abilities, and items do not really make sense, or are hard to because of the text limit, causing many abbreviations and whatnot to occur. The items have an option to check description, but I straight up had an item guide for the first part of the game until I remember what they all did. I recommend a guide for some of the cryptic parts, but once again, I won't force you. Everyone wants to play different, and that's completely cool for people who are not terminally online. Let's finally dive into the story now that most gameplay parts are discussed. And what a story, because some parts are really odd, to say the least. So to move quickly enough, the story is in a magical world separated by a large spread of diverse races, including humans and furries. One of these clans is the obvious focus, the Dragon Clan. Human appearance with the power of dragon transformation. They were locked in a long war. The clan was split into two teams, the Light and Dark Dragons.
I'll have you take a guess on which one was good and which one is evil.
Egged on by a goddess named many different things, but usually Tyr or Maria, depending on the game or translation. It was Tyr in the game I played, so I'll just stick with that, or honestly just the goddess. The goddess offered an all-powerful wish to be granted to the winner of this war. The Dark Dragons continue for this favor while the Light Dragons opposed and eventually suppressed Tyr and the Dark Dragons by sealing away the goddess. 6 magical keys were used to seal away the goddess, each representing a sort of element: earth, sky, space, time, dark, and light, that has its own effect on the world. The war subsided, the Light Dragons sealed their powers away and went into hiding. The Dark Dragons slowly began plotting to finish off their old brethren. Now fast forward to the present, Ryu and his sister live in a small town of Drogon. Clever, huh? With Sarah acting as a sort of priestess, protecting the small hamlet of surviving Light Dragons. Well, that same village gets raided by the militaristic Dark Dragons and now led by an Emperor Zog, not to be confused with ZOG, because that is apparently a white supremacist acronym for the Zionist-occupied government, aka Jewish people secretly war on the world or some shit. Found that out while streaming it, as Twitch called it hate speech, leaving me flabbergasted when somebody mentioned his name in chat. Just wanted to share that one. Anyways, after feeling the need to share that, Zog is leading the Dark Dragons to collect the 6 keys and release Tyr for the ultimate world domination and such. To top it off, the army seems set on taking out the rest of the Light Dragons too, because they are still pretty damn petty. Sarah hides Ryu away to fend off the dragons, but ultimately loses, but the army retreats for the time. Ryu is left with a few surviving villagers and are left unsure what to do in the crumbled Drogon. Ryu is tasked as one of the only capable left to race the Dark Dragons and collecting the keys before Zog. Releasing Tyr is not a great idea, since she kind of causes huge destructive war and her motives are still unclear for any side. It's unclear too whether Sarah is still alive and maybe we can rescue her as well. So thus begins our solo adventure for the time, and with no clear goal in sight besides find clues to the keys and whereabouts, he sets off. Many towns have a sort of problem of the week type scenario where you arrive, see a problem, deal with it, and maybe get a clue to the next key or whatnot. The first place of substance is the military-occupied town of Nanai, where a brief infiltration leads to the removal of the Earth Key, causing an entire leveling of the town in an instant. What? Gotta say, this was actually quite shocking. Showing at least a fraction of the power that these keys hold on their own, to be fair, gives us more urgency to say the least. Moving on to Winland, later moved to Windia for translation, a castle town reoccurring in the series where our heroine is finally met, Nina of the Bird Clan. She is the princess of Windia, and her father is actually poisoned by a sorcerer of the Dark Dragons. The Dark Dragons have their fingers in every frickin' pie on the planet here, so usually they're the root cause of every issue you come across. There is a brief section where we play solo as Nina, which I actually find to be pretty cool, and the two band together to save the king. With our second party member, we continue on to the next town, where we get Bo, the Wolfman. The whole series of events leads to two very similar towns on an opposing side of a river, Tantar and Tuntar, with an imposter chief of a village exposing the dragons, awakening a robot, curing the town of another zombie outbreak, and a bunch of weird shit. Skip a page or two and find out that one of the village gets completely wiped out by a volcano. The giant robot apparently gains sentience and I think kills himself via the volcano, sealing it off, I guess, and there's a wedding. GG, Terry, and Amelia.
This game is really fucking weird, I'm just gonna say it.
Anyways, we head off toward the next destination, but can make a pit stop to gain Ryu's dragon powers. I'd recommend. It makes him a pretty good party member to get mega cracked at Fortnite. Anyways, the next string of events leads with the collection of 2 keys, the Light and Dark keys. Aurea had the Light key, but gave it up to the Dark Dragons due to some nice intimidation, kidnapping, and blackmail. We can't do much yet, but the previous owner of the key in Aurea also happens to be a rich bastard with an extra ship to hand over. Luckily, we can mooch off this man who clearly pulled him up by his bootstraps to have a couple luxury yachts or some shit. We had the bleak town of thieves nearby, where a tower also nearby holds the Dark key. We do some questing and eventually bump into a thief named Karn enough times to finally join our party, after assisting in getting a thieving secret in a pyramid. He joins us and we save the kidnapped daughter of the noble, get a nifty ship in the process, but also releasing the grip of the Dark Dragons had on the town of Aurea. We are about to sail off when those vengeful dragons sink our ship. Luckily, the fish merchant of Gobi helps us out, I should say disgraced merchant, as he is more shady individual and got banished from his village, so I'm sure he'll be helpful, right? We secure another ship, and we get one that goes slightly farther than the first boat, to be honest. At least it's in the water this time. We get intercepted by more dragons, and they sink the ship, and we get stranded out on a small island, and it is up to the only party member that can breathe underwater to seek some help. Damn fish. This part kinda sucks, but is luckily short once you know where you're going. Gobi is trash, especially alone. You'll run and get gills for the rest of the crew, allowing underwater travel. Once the party becomes amphibious, they head towards the underwater merchant city of Prima. As boat travel may be out of the question, but the dragons could not get us under the water, so at least we're safe for the time being. Right? Well, it is of course not that easy, as we learn from a more dastardly plots are unfolding. Instead of getting immediately kicked out by his ex-villager friends, they run into another soon-to-be party member, Ox. Unfortunately, this man is about to die unless we kill the literal ghost that is trying to take his body. I wish it was always that easy to escape the clutches of death. Ox wakes up after taking a lot of injuries from the dragons. He reveals that his whole town of blacksmiths in the nearby town of Gant were taken prisoner to slave away for the dark dragons. Ox immediately joins with the stipulation of rescuing his village. It takes out a dark dragon stronghold in the process, so of course we do it. Well, that unfortunately isn't the resolution we wanted, as the dragons, for no apparent reason, are preparing to airstrike, or I guess sea strike, the town of Prima, with the Gant village working on a new torpedo weapon to blow the town out of existence. We of course do not want that, so we naturally seek help from an all-powerful sorceress named Blue. She is sleeping, and once waking and pleading to her, she decides to assist and stop the destruction of Prima. She continues to stick with the gang for the time being, as the search for the keys continue. A side note to introduce, the main force of antagonists in the second half of this game. Under Emperor Zog is his main general, Jade. Jade is a very powerful and capable leader. He commands 4 extremely powerful commanders under the moniker the 4 Devas. They are Moat, a wizard specializing in trapping people in dream worlds, Cyril, another powerful wizard who has an immense amount of resentment towards humans, Court, the typical mad scientist type, and Goda, the strong dumb one. We will see them directly interfering with the plans of the crews, especially since Ryu and company hold 4 of the 6 keys right now. The last 2 keys aren't exactly under the Dark Dragon's control just yet. One of the next destinations has us run into the first of the Devas as well. Court, the scientist, is running a secret lab place, making these poisonous flowers drug up a nearby village. We dispatch him pretty quickly and return the town to normal. En route to the next of the keys, we come across the Mole People village. There is the warrior and final party member of Moku, cursed into the dream world by a Deva member, Moat. We decide to try and rescue him, as his digging powers will be needed to move any further. A nearby island town of Tunland sees the village of people who only speak in music. This place is doubly nice, as we can collect a cure from Moku, as well as obtain the time key held by the townspeople here. Well, after some weird shenanigans and peeking on the princess here while she was bathing, a lot of other weird shit too in this part.
Your Honor, I plead not guilty. Would you believe that I'm actually just trying to save the world? I had to peep on her in the bath.
We end up losing the time key to Deva Cyril as she escapes back to the dragon town of Scandi. With not much else to do, we rescue Mogu and continue on the location of the last key. The sky key is located on the other side of this mountain range in the town of Spring. Ironically, it is frozen over, due to Moat messing with the sky key in a nearby tower. We go to the tower, enter the dream world, and kill Moat, securing the sky key in the process. With not much else direction and the remaining world slowly dwindling, we continue on towards Scandi in the south, hoping to clear all our goals in one there. In between, the town of Carmen is stuck still, all the people frozen in time. Assuming this is the meddling of Cyril and or the time key, we look for answers. One townsperson named Alan is unaffected and helps the crew save Carmen. They encounter Cyril again and discover a connection with her and Alan being both from the same village growing up. Tormented by emotions, Cyril wounds but doesn't kill Alan. The team retreats and reassesses before confronting Cyril again. Alan heals up and the team faces Cyril in the nearby fort. They emerge victorious and Alan tries to convince her to give up fighting for the dragons. She hesitates but ultimately gives up the time key to Ryu. Goda, the final Deva, shows up and attempts to recover the key but is stopped by Cyril, turning traitor. The two clash as the team escapes, the fort begins to fall apart, and Alan runs in last minute to be with Cyril as the fortress collapses. All 3 in there assumed dead. With all the Devas gone, the 6 keys held, the only destination left is to go to Scandi and confront Zog. Of course, there's one final snag here. The clash led to some space-time distortion shit, losing Nina in the process. We find her, but she has lost her memory. The team finds a way to cure said amnesia through some fetch questing and stuff, but she restores her memory, getting a new look in the process and a new ability. The power of her people to transform into a giant bird. As their final mode of transportation, the party continues on to Scandi. Confronting Zog is quick, all things considered, and he goes down rather well. At least bro takes the loss nicely. And of course, with the absence of most loyal Commander Jade nowhere in sight, you can assume that this fight is not over. Of course it isn't. Due to some meddling with Sarah, Jade tricks Ryu into meeting with Sarah again under his control. She steals all 6 keys and gives them to Jade. The two of them travel to a sealed tower where Tyr lies. Ryu ends up confronting his mind-controlled sister and are forced to slay her, being the only way to stop Jade's powerful magic. She dies in Ryu's arms, gaining her last few moments of lucidity to reassure Ryu and the team that they did the right thing and need to continue on to stop Jade and the goddess. Using Ryu's sister to slow them down, though, proved to be a good final gambit for him, as he unseals the goddess right before they arrive. Jade and Tyr go to the final dungeon, a floating tower called the Obelisk. The team makes their way there for the final battle. Final dungeon starts. You, by this point, hopefully have all the dragon forms for Ryu and can unlock the ultimate dragon form, the Agni. It is rather obscure to find. I recommend using the internet, as I said, as it requires delving into a dungeon you have explored in a few dozen hours. You want this still to get the best ending. In the Obelisk, we encounter Goda, who is alive and faithful to Jade still. We take him down and move on to Jade, who is standing before the goddess. Jade can be pretty tough, but the Agni form does kind of wipe the floor with him, if used. Jade dies while glazing the power of Tyr one last time. We come face to face with the goddess, in a small chamber. Tyr appears to us a small female, seemingly normal, even timid. She tries to tell us she has done nothing wrong, and we even engage in a fight with this crying girl. The endings are decided here. If you fight Tyr as is, the battle is long, but she will go down after knocking her HP down for a long time. The game simply ends with little to no resolution and the credits roll. The final scene cuts to the chamber where Tyr sits saying she did nothing wrong, then we'll flash it on him in his face before the screen cuts. Of course, we want the good ending. Agni is so broken that if used on Tyr, she gets annoyed at you and rage quits the fight after one hit from Agni. She is irritated and turns into her true form, a grotesque demon. The real final fight occurs, but honestly, it is super easy. Agni takes every party member into account and transforms into one giant dragon. It becomes a back and forth of smacking each other. The form is stupidly powerful, but I guess it works as a sort of victory lap for you if you got it, so enjoy it. Tyr goes down, Ryu gets to see Sarah one last time, congratulating him, and the team leaves a crumbling obelisk. The ending here shows a bit more completion where the team slowly goes around the world, seeing each member off back to their respective homes. The team contributes to fixing the world that the Dark Dragons destroyed. Finally, Ryu can assist rebuilding his hometown as well. It's a pretty standard ending, as it is an extended version of the bad ending, without the ominous cutscene. Tyr isn't fully defeated, she's a recurring antagonist, like Ganon, but for now the world sees peace. So I already listed my gripes with things like the translation, movement speed, and the balancing, and that's really all that there is to it. In terms of the story, the characters are not all that fleshed out, and the story feels so disjointed at times. The story hops around a lot, and some plot points feel really serious, and then the next is super out of place. The middle portion of the game is so wacky, and then a lot of really serious story beats happen, especially near the end game. The party members do appear in some cutscenes, but not all of them, and not all of them get the spotlight. Some cutscenes have some party members completely absent from them. Regardless, I know this is an older game, so it's not like they're going to have super deep character moments, and I'm not overly upset or annoyed. I think the plot was mostly serviceable, as there were some out-of-pocket moments that did get me chuckling at the absurdity of it. I would up the recommendation a shit ton if a sort of remaster, remake, port came out with the speed up button at the very least. Maybe some fixed translations. All in all, it's really not a bad time. If you haven't dipped your toes into the series and love RPGs, do not skip Breath of Fire, but I don't know if I'd recommend it in more of a casual sense. I wanted to play this because I wanted to cover the whole series due to my love of the third game. Otherwise, if looking for RPG classics, I can't recommend this one too much, unless you are a Breath of Fire fan or an SNES RPG connoisseur. Even on the console, the SNES holds so many more beginner-friendly RPGs, better stories, more addicting gameplay, music, and a lot. Even in the same series, I really think any can be played without the other, and I started with 3, and that game is such a better entry point. I still stand by this series being hella underrated, though, and really needs some more games, so do pick it up if you are interested. Capcom did a solid job with their first title, all things considered. I know I downplayed it a little bit, but at this time, Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest already had multiple games under their belt, so I think this is a really good starting point for the series. It does have a lot of untapped potential that we could get a revival from. We are seeing Capcom returning with some gaming classics like Onimusha and Okami making returns, so hell, maybe, just maybe, we could see a return of Breath of Fire. I would really love that.
Please, I'm really sick of begging for RPGs, especially the dead variety. Please, we're just Golden Sun.